Grace and peace, everyone. Here we are again, another Foundational Friday on the Enlightenment and Transformation channel. I am, for now, Yuya Assaan-ANU. I say for now because things are changing so rapidly in the world and in the spiritual world and that world above that I have to say for now, things have been zooming. I feel like even over the past few days, I lost a few days. Seems as though I just was recording the last session, and here we are again. But as always, I'm excited to be here with you, especially excited about today's segment because it deals with an area that I don't think has ever been broadcasted or spoken on in spiritual communities or through any other spiritual broadcast. So I'm excited to be able to bring it to you. I'm excited to share this information in a time and space where the subject of the matter is so prevalent. And of course, we're talking about digital versus audio. Music is the weapon. Now, I have to, of course, give a verbal libation to Fela Kuti, who gave us this phrase, music is the weapon, right? He said that is his weapon. And those who know me, of course, know my profound respect and love that I have for Fela, one of my very prominent and prevalent spiritual guides in this journey and in my work. So I pull from him very often musically, and I take that music that I pull from him and I translate it into feeling, into emotion, and that's what comes out when I speak to you. You know, every session that I do, for the most part, is impromptu. I have no notes or anything like that. I just close my eyes and speak. But there are things that come through. There are people who come through, such as Fela. And I am thankful for him to be here with me. So, getting back to our subject, music is a weapon, digital versus analog versus digital. What are we speaking about here, and what is the relevancy to our spiritual walk? Before we get started into our journey, I just want to give an acknowledgement to those students who have joined the Facebook group, our new spiritual training. It's been very interesting. Again, as I told you, I do peruse the group from time to time, and usually I try to every dawning to come in and answer questions that may be posted or contribute to certain dialogues. But, you all have been holding it down without me pretty well. So it's been beautiful to witness that, and you're sharing information as you should, which is excellent. I would urge anyone who is in the ANU spiritual training as a registered student to join that particular group on Facebook. The URL is... the name, actually, I just got to give you the name of the group, and it's the ANU Spiritual Training. All right. You just have to search for that, or, you could befriend me on Facebook and then I'll add you into it. All right. So definitely become a part of that. It also helps me to determine where each student is at in order for me to help you and for me to see where your challenges are or where your strengths are. So it's a good way for me to kind of monitor everyone's progress. So, I would definitely appreciate those who are not in it to join it. And that goes the same for the Sadulu House page. If you have not clicked like on it so that you can be kept abreast of things, because as some of you have seen, I've been putting up more videos and things like that. So, click like on that page and you'll be kept abreast to what's going on and what's coming forward and the direction that we're going in. There's a lot of new things getting ready to happen. So that's enough on the housekeeping. Oh, of course, no live session this Sunday. It's every other Sunday. So not this Sunday, but next Sunday we'll be meeting for live session. Our last live session was excellent. Actually, we had a couple of technical issues with people signing in. I even had a little trouble signing in, so I came in a little later. But once we got there, it was great. Questions that were coming forth, and people were getting the answers. So I would say, even though the group was a little smaller because technical issues, it was probably one of the best live Q&As that we've had since we started. So, thank you all for coming through for that and doing what you're supposed to do. This is how you grow, and as I've said to my students and even supporters, the more you give, the more I give. Right? I'm not a bottomless pit of encyclopedic information and charity. I need you to become an active participant in your own process in order for me to help you. As I always say, help me to help you. Okay, so part of that is making sure you're there for the live sessions, making sure you're in the Facebook group, and most importantly, you're participating. When questions are being put out, that you're responding and, you're an active member. This helps you, it helps me, it helps everyone else within the learning community. So now we can get on to our discussion of digital versus analog. And as Baba Fela says, music is the weapon, as it certainly is. Music can be the healer, and music could be the weapon. Music has a profound effect on our neurological state. It also has a profound effect on our emotional state, and it has a profound effect on our spiritual state, growth, and development. But we don't really talk about music much in our spiritual circles or our delivery methods of music. And this is problematic. And just in the same instance, in many spiritual circles, we don't talk about our eating much. We don't talk about food and how, again, food has an effect on neurological development, not only in children, but also in adults. Now, if you hinder or contaminate your neurological development, then you contaminate your gateway. As I've said in my book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power, you don't have it, pick up a copy, Grasping the Root of Divine Power, that your brain is the cosmic gateway to your higher self. You can strengthen your spirit, develop it. You can learn a lot of esoteric information, but if you can't retain it and reproduce those experiences through your intellectual memory, then it's pretty much worth nothing. And you just have had a bunch of experiences. And ultimately, those experiences they're not going to free you. Very similar to what people experience when they get together in large assembly and masses and services, spiritual services. They scream, they cry, they dance for joy, they fall out in the spirit. But when they walk out of the building, you say, okay, well, what was it about? I don't know, but it felt good. And as we've seen in communities where you have that type of assembly, you have those type of services, those tend to be the worst communities. Those people do not prosper at all because they're not developing their intellectual capacity, but only their capacity for emotion and experience. Okay, so it's very important, again, to start to look at the things that we intake, and that's what this show is about. What are we intaking? Not just physically, but also sonically. What are we intaking? So I want to just get into a couple of little nerd facts for a moment, because I always have those waiting in the wings. But it's important for you to understand. Right now, you're listening to me through a medium known as MP3. Even for those of you who are streaming, who are live right now, whether you're live or archived, Blog Talk Radio, and if I end up putting this show on YouTube, doesn't matter. They both deliver audio in MP3. Okay, so, and we all know what an MP3 is, especially for those of you who steal music off the internet, which is probably about 90% of you. You know what an MP3 is, okay? And we know before MP3s, we use CDs. Now CDs are they're old school, to have a physical medium. We're not even speaking about cassettes or vinyl, 8-track or quarter-inch. All right, we won't even go that far back, but those are even more antiquated in a sense. But as I do with many things, I try to get you guys to see the core and the root of why things are. Who antiquated the cassette? Who antiquated the vinyl? Who antiquated the quarter-inch? Who antiquated to 2-inch? These are all analog mediums, by the way. CD was our first consumer digital medium. We had others before, but that was the first consumer level medium. And I'm going to give you just a little information. You know, when we're dealing with MP3s, MP3 is short for MPEG. Okay, MPEG, M-P-E-G. For those of you who download movies, you've probably seen the word MPEG before. And in total, it's MPEG layer 1. MPEG 1 audio layer 3. Now we have different levels. You know, you had MPEG 1, MPEG 2, MPEG 3. But our current most common layer is layer 3. So you have MPEG layer 1, audio layer 3. Okay, that's what MP3 means. Okay, and MPEG stands for the Moving Pictures Experts Group. Okay, Moving Pictures Expert Group. Because the MPEG format is not just for audio, but it's for videos, for audio and video delivery. But pay attention, Moving Pictures Experts Group. Who said they were experts? And obviously we know it's a group. So this is a bunch of people who were sitting around who developed an audio standard for you to listen to your music with, or your speeches, or me, or, you know, even your phone calls, right? This was the Moving Pictures Expert Group, and they were formed under what we call the ISO. Some of you have probably seen that name before if you've tried to burn a CD. And the ISO is an international standards organization, right? So someone has set a standard for you, and they said this is what people need to do internationally, and it's not arbitrary or haphazard, because we see the word organization in there, International Standard Organization, ISO. So they, with some scientists, of course, not musicians, not audiophiles, not psychiatrists. Well, no, actually, that's wrong. There were psychologists in the mix on this, and we'll get into that. They developed this standard for audio distribution. Now, I'm going to teach you a couple of terms first. One of the things that's very important to understand is audio to digital conversion, which is AD. Sometimes you see these on the back of your radios, or your audio components, or your CD players, or your DVD players. You see ADDA. And AD stands for audio analog to digital. And it's a converter inside of recorders, right? And what that converter does is it takes a measurement at certain time intervals of signal that's going into it, and it stores it as a number, right? So just like right now I'm speaking, and Blog Talk Radio is recording my voice, but it's only recording it at certain points. But it's happening so quickly that to you it sounds like one smooth audio signal. But in reality, it's chopped up. You know, it's kind of like if I said, okay, take some water out of that bucket, you would have to reach in, take some water, and when it's filled, let's say if you used a cup, for instance, and when the cup is full, you pour the cup out and get some more water. Well, that time in between you pouring that water out and lifting it up out, there's no water being taken out of the bucket. That's the space interval. You get it? Okay, so you have, that's analog digital conversion. And DA, which is digital to analog conversion, that's when you're listening back. It's pretty much the reverse, but what it does is it takes those numbers that it's stored, which is the computer stored, or Blog Talk Radio stored, because remember, all data is stored in a number, as a number, binary. Actually, it's stored as binary numbers. One of the earliest forms of binary data was IFA. Okay, we're going to get into IFA maybe later on, but that is for the registered students. You've heard me speak about IFA, and, you know, in phase 2, you'll be dealing with the Odu IFA, which is the 16 major Odu. But this is a form of binary, okay? Binary is zeros and ones. IFA deals with ones and twos per se, but it really still is 0-1 because it's female and male. But in any event, so what happens is the digital audio converter takes the digital information, which is the numbers, and then converts it to analog. Analog is what you listen with your human ear, right? And so it takes those numbers and it tries to replicate what it heard previously. Because previously it heard something and said, okay, I'm going to take what I heard and now I'm going to convert it to data, to binary data, digital data, and then it stores it, right, on your hard drive, your flash card, whatever, your phone. And then when you want to listen back, it sends it back, trying to recreate what it thought it heard before. Now, what is the it that I'm talking about? I'm talking about your phone, your computer, or whatever else. Now, that whole, remember when I said there's an interval where it catches the information? That's called PCM, or pulse code modulation. Sometimes you'll see that again on the back of your CD player, or if you download a WAV file from the internet, you'll see PCM. PCM is pulse code modulation. It means every time there's a pulse, which is the audio, and as a pulse is an off and on. And the modulation is when we're going to get it, when we're not going to get it. I'm talking about the sound. So now, again, dealing with sound. And don't worry, I'll be quick. I'll be done with the nerd stuff soon, but I want you to take notes. It's important. You have what's called sampling frequency. It's another term we use. And the sampling frequency is the number of times the incoming audio signal is measured, right? And sampling frequency is typically determined in kilohertz. So again, the number of times it's measured, we're dealing with, again, like the bucket thing. So let's say if I can get 3 cups of water out of the bucket in 60 seconds, then that would be the sampling frequency, because I'm sampling that water out 3 times every 60 seconds, whatever we would call that algorithm. That measurement, maybe 1/60. If I could do it 6 times, it would be 6/60, so forth and so on. Now, your CDs that you mainly listen to, or those of you who still listen to CDs, they're recorded at 44.1 kilohertz. That means the audio signal is grabbed 44.1 kilohertz, within a second. Now, it seems like it's real fast, but it actually really isn't. I'll explain why. And then you have what's called bit depth. Bit depth. Okay, bit depth would be like we could say the bit depth would be the size of the cup, right? So how much are you taking at a time? Bit depth is the length of binary or symbols that are used to describe the signal that was inputted. Okay, so let's say I'm speaking right now and you only know 2 words, good or bad. So I say, okay, I want you to record everything I'm saying, but you have to use these 2 words, good or bad, right? So that means you really can't record that information. It might just be bad, it might just be good, or good, bad, right? Now, the greater the vocabulary, the more information. You may have good, bad, loud, deep, high, smooth, rough, pleasant, right? So now the more words you can use, the more information you can store, which means when it comes time now to reproduce that sound, it will probably be closer to the original, because you were able to retain more of what that original was. That's your bit depth. CDs are 16 bits. Okay, so a CD is 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz. Now let's get to your ear. It's believed by the International Standards Organization that humans do not perceive any sound above 22.05 kilohertz. So when they save CD sounds, 44.1, they say as long as you can chop a sound in half, if it's brought at in 44.1 kilohertz, the average human ear can't tell the difference. So your CDs, even though it says 44.1, it's actually playing back to you at 22.05, because it figures you can't hear anything above that anyway. It figures you can't, right? And who's it? They, right? It and they would be the International Standards Organization. Who are they? Who knows, right? Are they spiritualists? Definitely not. Well, we think they're not. Probably are, though. So, let's get back to your MP3s. Now, your MP3s are interesting. Well, let me explain something about CDs and PCMs, right? That format of 16-bit 44 kilohertz, what it tries to do is reproduce what it heard exactly as it heard it. That's the whole science of a CD. It's not trying to change anything. It's not trying to give you more bass or more treble. It just tries to take what it heard, store as much of that information as possible as it can, and give you back exactly what you heard. That's what it attempts to do. But of course, it cannot do that, but it attempts to do that. Now, an MP3 uses what we call perceptual encoding, perceptual coding. Now, perceptual coding is real interesting because it uses what they call psychoacoustics. There's the word psycho. Now it's getting a little interesting now, huh? Psychoacoustics now deal with what these organizations think you perceive when you listen to music or you listen to sound. Okay? It's their assumption of how you're listening to things. And based on that, it encodes the music with that assumption of the psychoacoustics. It uses a technology called masking, but we'll get into that. Now, here's what's most important about this. With MP3 music, what they do is they take the most prevalent and prominent sounds. So let's say if it's the kick drum or the snare or the vocal, and they give that a deeper bit depth so that it has more clarity to it. And then they take the sounds that are less subtle and they either get rid of them or they give them a much, much lower bit depth so the quality is not as high. But because they're subtle, you don't really notice that the quality is low. So it'll be distorted. So say if it's like a little bell in the back or something like that. If you could really tune into that bell, you would hear that it probably sounds more like a trash can lid. But you've grown so accustomed to hearing music like that. And you're really just listening to the kick drum anyway, or the snare, or the bass line. So you're not even really listening to the subtle things that are going on in your song or in your audio. And that's what they have now determined or shaped your mind into being someone who does not listen or perceive that which is subtle, but only that which is prominent and prevalent. And because of that, they've now been able to create a whole entire audio standard of how you listen to everything based on how they perceive you encode music when you listen to it with your ear. Now, again, an MP3 takes a 16-bit 44 kilohertz sound, but it just converts it into something that's much, much lower. Now, this was necessary at a time because, and this, again, around 1993 is when we started dealing with this technology. And I should also say that the higher your bit rate in your MP3, the more data it gives for each sound. So most of us listen to MP3s in 128 kilobit or 256 or 320 even, 320 being the highest. Okay, that means that's a really big cup taking that water out of that bucket. You're getting a bigger vocabulary, but still extremely low. Still, okay? Now, when you're listening on a phone, phones usually use about 8-bit. So think about the difference in the sound. If you try to play some music over the phone, it wouldn't have any bass, barely has any treble, just a little mid-range. You can kind of make out what's going on. But you take that same song and you listen to it from, let's say, in 128-bit, it sounds much better. Right now, Blog Talk, what they do is they take the audio and they bring it down to 64 kilobit. So if you hear like any scratchiness or whatever in my voice, it's because it has taken out what it doesn't think is important and my vocal inflections. So basically, it's telling you what to listen to. It's telling you what's important. For all you know, my heart may be racing right now, and my heartbeat is being picked up in my phone as I'm speaking. For all you know, but you wouldn't know because they've removed it because it's too subtle. Now, the same technology and the same formula and rules apply to movies as well. When we download MP4s or FLVs from the internet, we're downloading what's called a compressed format, and when it's not compressed, it's called uncompressed or lossless. Lossless meaning that nothing was lost in the signal. Now, how does this tie into our spirituality? Some people have probably already tied it in. If you're now living in a world, in a society where what you can perceive and what you should perceive is being shaped for you, then the same thing would go for your spiritual understandings. Oftentimes with our spiritual understandings, we're only looking for the pronounced, profound, and blatant experiences. and not realizing that when it comes to African thought, African spirituality, even concepts of African love, it's never loud. It's always subtle and quiet. Anything else that's loud and pronounced and all over the place is usually something trying to manipulate you, even a spirit. So when you have an experience, most of the time when you go into the woods or this or that and you say, oh, I felt this way, I felt that, but you come back with no greater wisdom, a lot of times you're being manipulated by a spirit that has come down to understand your neurological process and the retardation in your spiritual intelligence. Because the retardation in your spiritual intelligence now says, just give him loud, bright, shiny things. Knock him on his feet with a bright light and, some type of real fantastic, magnificent experience, and he'll follow you to the end of the earth. Not understanding that spirit is the quiet, small voice, as named in the Zohar, or even named in the book of Tahuti. The quiet, small voice is spirit. The prefix ka, even, which is, we know in Kemet was spirit, also means wind or silent. Okay? So when you're now listening to music like Fela, whoever else who was doing rituals in the middle of his songs, he would be giving offerings to Eshu and many other Orisha, you don't even pick up any of that energy. Because psychoacoustics not just deals with what you're hearing, but how you feel based on hearing it. I'll give you an example. If we're sitting in a quiet room and someone drops a plate, everyone is startled and turns around because it seems like it was such a big deal. But if we're sitting in a room and somebody is clapping, or the whole room is clapping and this plate drops at the same exact volume, you don't really pay much attention to it. So let's look at that within our spiritual world and in society. If they can maintain things at a certain level, right, or certain loudness, then when other things come to give you warnings or to give you signs, you don't even really perceive it or give it any attention. We see so many different things in the news, so many different things, so many tragic stories. So many of our leaders are being chased after, hunted down, bounties being put on their heads. We barely even respond. Our great elder, Bobby Hemmett, just had a massive stroke recently. And I encourage all to contribute to his love fund. You can probably do a Google search on it. Send him some money. Send Bobby Hemmett some money. This is a big deal. This is much bigger than Scandal or the Knicks or whatever consumer foolishness that, we're eating up now. These are people who have been guiding and given birth to people like me who you learn from. Okay. So send $5, send $10, send what you can, help our elders out when they fall. Show them that, we do have a healthy community on the rise, because the community is judged by how it treats its women, children, and elders. Okay. So again, dealing with the science of digital versus analog, what we're really dealing with is your ability to perceive the subtle. And digital slowly robs you of that personally for its own effects and gain. When MP3 was first introduced, it was introduced over internet lines that were using dial-up modem, going to computers with very small hard drives. That's not the issue anymore. So why are we still using a format that was based on computers that were running 20 years ago, right? 1993. Because now there's a standard that has been produced where it's dumbed you down. You can't even hear properly anymore, let alone perceive the subtle nuances and movements of spirit. That has been done purposely. So what am I saying? You need to get to some analog audio. You need to get to analog experiences. You can't learn everything you want about spirituality or Orisha on YouTube or online. You can't create true friendships on Facebook and Twitter. This is all digital, because now you've been trained to not pick up the subtle chemistry between yourself and another person, or yourself and a spiritual entity. This is dangerous. Okay. Your most profound experiences should not happen through a digital medium, because they're manipulating what they feel the most important aspects of that experience should be for you. With that said, I am Yuya Assaan-ANU. This has been another session of Foundational Fridays. Make sure you sign up for classes at saduluhouse.com. And also, make sure you pick up a copy of Grasping the Root of Divine Power and Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. Until next time, peace.